Okay, once that we have seen all the stages of the project, that the identification, the design of the project, the implementation, and the evaluation of the project, and that we have seen also the problems that we have for mainstream the environment in these stages, in these phases, we are going to provide you for using different tools and methods. We want you to know some of the most commonly used resources and to test which one is best with the actions or the project that we are carrying out. So to mainstream the environment, it is best to do it systematically. We will offer you these tools so you can use them, and the one that is best for you to suit, the best to suit your project. So there are several methods that can be used depending on the nature and the complexity of the project and the environment that is going to be carried out. As we have seen before, here we have the classification of the impacts. We have positive, negative, temporary, permanent, direct, indirect, reversible, reversible. So we have to identify which impact we have, and we need to classify them first. Then once all the impact has been identified, an assessment of the impact should be made. We have divided different tools that we offer you according to the methods used into 4 types: matrix, graphics, checklist or listing, and a network or flow diagram. So we will start with the SABAS method. This is a method whose objective is the integration of the environment into development cooperation project, but it can be used for any other. It's employing various tools, always based on the 4 fundamental elements of the environment: soil, water, biodiversity, and atmosphere. So each of our impacts, we have to see if they have an impact in the soil, in the water, in biodiversity, or in the atmosphere. So this manual is is only in Spanish, but it can be used in any languages. So let's continue with the matrix tools. That the first one we are going to explain is the Leopold matrix. It was the first method to be established for environmental impact assessment. It was created in 1971. Basically, it is a matrix that presents in the columns the actions of the project, and in the files, in the rows, the components of the environment and their characteristics. So the matrix consists of the following components: identification of the project actions that are involved and the components of the affected environment. And then in the columns, we have a subjective estimation of the magnitude of the impact on a scale of 1 to 10, with being positive or negative, and you put a positive or negative sign in order to reflect the magnitude of the impact or the disturbance. So, and then we have subjective assessment of the importance or the intensity of the impact on a scale also of 1 to 10. So both values are placed in the corresponding box and in the top left and in the bottom right respectively, and then they are multiplied. So the Leopold matrix is a method that can be applied in an expeditious way. It is low cost and allow us to identify the possible impacts from a vision of the set of possible interactions. It also allows us to compare the different alternatives. It allows us to identify the project actions that cause the impacts of lesser or greater magnitude and importance. And in addition, these matrices are useful for communicating the impacts detected. The disadvantages of this matrix are that there's subject estimation that is subjective, and it does not consider the indirect impacts of the project, or neither the cumulative impacts when you have to some impacts that can be cumulative. Then we have the multi-criteria methods. These methods aid decision making by providing a selection of alternatives based on various criteria. It allows us to compare theoretically unrelated variables of different nature. So the variables are not independent, although at first it may seem that theoretically they are not related. This method is recommended to be used in the final stage of the project identification, when the analysis of alternatives is carried out. The next one that we are going to see is the SWOT method. It is a simple method that examines the positive and the negative factors of a project, program, initiative, or sometimes this method, the SWOT method, has been used in an entire organization. So it's taking into account both external and internal aspects. As it is based on the judgment of the participants, SWOT analysis is by nature subjective and qualitative. The advantage is that it allows a quick visualization of the adequacy or inadequacy of the strategy in relation to a problem. And the disadvantage, as the other one that we said before, is that it's a subjective tool. So distinguish between internal and external elements sometimes is not really easy. Here we have an example of using the SWOT methods, and we have some of the questions that we can ask. Next one is the matrix of the stakeholder matrix. This is a good tool in the project identification process. It is a double entry table that systematizes the relationship between the people who have something to do with the project and the relevant natural resources. To do this, we need to draw up a list of stakeholders, identify the natural resources that will be affected by our project, and then specify which activities relates the stakeholder to the resources. Environmental risk matrix. It is also a double entry table like before, where the risks and opportunities related to the natural resources affected in each of the activities are systematized. So the frequency of the occurrence, the underlying factors that threaten the quality and the quantity of this, and the possible measures to be taken, all of this can be evaluated. The next one, this is an example of the environmental risk matrix, when you can see the consequences will be the severity, employees, environment, impact severity, the probability to happen. The next one, we will start with the graphic tools. Do you remember I told that we will divide it by 4? We have seen all the matrix tools. Now we will see the graphic. The transect, we will start with the transect. We have put you here several transect. So they consist of the classification points along a line to be followed. It can be a straight line or a zigzag line. This classification must be defined before starting to carry it out. There are transects that can be about land use, vegetation transect, biodiversity, soil transect. For example, a soil transect in which the soil samples are taken and a characterization is made. Biodiversity transect is which the land is divided into grids and the different species found on the surfaces and are noted. Sometimes we are also using this transect like an activity itself, because it can make awareness of for the people of what is the biodiversity of the area. The transect may be of most interest to us will be the land use in our project area. So we draw a line, and in this line we go along, we define the points, the type of vegetation, the houses, what's happening here, water points. The basic idea is to represent the different characteristics and changes that occur following a route through the area. So transect can be used to support and complement maps. As transect, usually we have to be carried out in site. So now we will define the maps. Paper maps are designed at scales that provide the user with a broader view of the environment rather than a specific data. This is also very good activity to carry on with the people, with the participants, just to after doing an activity or before doing the activity, just to read a map, and after doing the activity that they can draw their own map, right? It is always a good idea to have a map of the area of the action that we are planning to develop our activities. On the map, you can mark what are the most interest water points, to able to develop activities nearby in summer, parks and gardens, protected and vulnerable areas, So you can also indicate places for green shopping, where the recycle points are, the clean points. It will also allow us to design the more of the transport that we will use in our activities of the project, both for the beneficiaries and for those who are implementing them. The maps should simplify the vision of the whole. So, if necessary, several maps can be made, each with a thematic focus. In some projects, it can be very interesting to make the maps, as we were saying, with the beneficiaries themselves. It can help in the realization of the analysis of the reality, as it specifies the reality seen by the users themselves. Another graphic tool is the photo interpretation. Thus, these tools are very useful when the place of an action is far from where we are for. For example, in development cooperation projects that we are more used to do it, making an extensive study and identification and design of the project based on this map can save many resources in the implementation of the project. And nowadays, it is not necessary to be an expert in geography to be able to make a prior analysis of the situation on the ground, right? Everyone has Google Maps, Mapper, Google Earth, and there are many tools available and other ones on the market that allow you to view aerial photographics or satellite imaging for free as well. So GIS is this kind of maps, and this is what we were saying. They support the planning, management, and evaluation of the project and actions, and also improve the decision making. It is very important to have a good basic geographic information in the territory in which the intervention is going to take place. Map will help in the collection of the information, also for the indicators, and offer the possibility of georeferencing a wide range of data. And the maps also allows the elaboration of prevention plans to reduce the vulnerability of the population. The maps allows the cooperation with another NGOs or with another stakeholders. So here we are going to leave you some examples of the maps available on the web for example, population estimation. That before, when we are designing a project or when we are identifying a project, is very useful to have this kind of maps. We are going to see another kind of tools, that is the list type tools, the checklist, for example. This method consists of an ordered list of environmental factors that are potentially affected by a human action. Its main usefulness is to identify the possible consequences linked to the proposed actions, ensuring at an early stage of the environmental impact that no relevant alteration is omitted. So the advantage of the checklist are that they are very useful for structuring the initial stages. It can be a tool to support the definition of the significant impacts of a project. It ensures that no essential factors are omitted from the analysis, and also you can easily compare different project alternatives. The limitation that they have is that it can be some rigid or static or one-dimensional, so it can limit the assessing individual impacts, and they do not identify indirect impacts, probabilities of occurrence or risk associated with this impact. So it is good to use it with another tool, not using this one only like a lonely tool. So here you can see an example of a checklist tool or a questionnaire. It is also very important in the evaluation stage. It can be at the beginning, but also in the evaluation stage. These ones are very common and very used. Let's go to the next one. Is the flow chart, the flow diagrams. It's a graphic or symbolic representation of a process. So they are usually used to establish a linear causal relationship between the proposed action and the affected environment. They are also used to analyze the indirect impact. So this is very good to analyze the indirect impact. When you have a complexity in the project or a complexity in the impact, it is important that you use this. So they have the advantage of being easy to construct and to propose the causal relationship. However, they do not facilitate the quantification of the impacts. And also they are limited to showing the cause-effect relationship. So they become more complex as the action and environmental impacts increase. These diagrams will be complementary to a matrix or to other more quantitative methodologies. Here, Google recommend the forest and community fluorogram. There is one fluorogram that we have been using. We can see the next one. Here we have do another flow chart, another example of the flow chart in situ vegetation data, and then you can see all the impact. Also, the network diagrams is kind of the same of an extension of the FluGeoRank, so they intend to incorporate long-term impacts, right? In these diagrams, the environmental components are interconnected to form the plots or the networks. So the next one is a different type, that is the footprints. This also, we were talking about this in the indicators, how to create indicators, because this is an indicator. The carbon footprint, the water footprint, and the ecological footprint are the more well known. So we are going to talk about this, but I think we are much more familiar with all of this, right? So the footprint represent the impacts that are produced by the development of activity to achieve a given objective. These footprints are particularly useful as an element of environmental awareness. It is understandable for non-specialist audience and allows the comparison between countries or regions or the products or the organizations. We will start with the carbon footprint. We will explain the carbon footprint, even when it is the more known, I think, the one that the most that you know. But the carbon footprint, it is the total set of gas emission costs directly and indirectly by a person or organization or an event or a product. So for an easy quantification, the carbon footprint is often expressed in terms of the amount of carbon dioxide or its equivalent of other greenhouse gas emitted, right? So on an international level, there are different guidelines and protocols for calculating the carbon footprint depending on the scope of the footprint, all right? So we will leave you some examples ahead, and you can choose which one, but we have many options here on how to calculate it, right? So once the size and the footprint are known, it is possible to implement a strategy to reduce or to offset the emissions through different public or private programs. This action represents a measure for the contribution of the organization to be socially responsible entities, and a further element of awareness for the assumption among citizens or more sustainable practices. As a complement to the Ministry Carbon Footprint Calculator, here are some other applications for different type of action. So this can be very useful when the travel is involved in a project, to think about doing it as efficient as possible, and to reduce the number of trips and to optimize the travel, especially in this project that we are doing, that flights are involved. So we can think about, okay, is this needed or not? So in the next slide, we're explaining the water footprint. So the water footprint is the volume of fresh water used directly or indirectly in the production of a good. It is the water that we don't see, but it is present through all the chain. A water footprint can be calculated for a particular product, for any well-defined group of consumer, for example, individual, a family, a village, a town, city, even a country, or producers, public organization, a private company, an economic sector. So there are three types of water that are defined for the calculation of the water footprint, that is blue, green, and gray water. The total water footprint is the sum of three of them, and they are required by a product through its production and distribution process. Water use is measured in terms of volumes of water consumed or polluted per unit of time. It is usually expressed in terms of volume or water per year. So we have left you also some tools just to show the consumers how their consumption patterns are. And the last footprint we are going to talk about is the ecological footprint. This indicator measures the equivalent to the amount of productive land and water needed to produce the resources that society consumes and to assimilate the waste it produces whenever that land and water are found. So it is a synthetic, easily understandable index that has spread rapidly. You probably have heard about we already have waste two planets with all the resources that we are doing, or with the typical life of people from Europe, we will need three different planets to live. So this is the pressure. This is what is explaining, no? So that's why it's easily understandable. The procedure for calculating the ecological footprint is to group the different pressures on the environment and translate them into the same measure, the biological productive area. As it is difficult to take into account absolutely all the impacts, the number of pressures has been restricted to the food production of timber and other raw materials, energy generation and built space. Additionally, it is considered necessary to add to the above a part dedicated to the conservation of biological diversity. So sometimes this footprint has been divided into different. And the following 6 are the most studied. This is the crops, that is the land on which humans carry out agricultural activities supplying products such as food, oils, and fiber. Pasture is the area devoted to pasture from which certain animals products such as meat, milk, and leather and wool are obtained. Forest is the area occupied by forests from which mainly good products used in the production of goods or fuel, such as biofuel, food goods are obtained. The sea, the biological productive sea surface used by humans for fish and shellfish. And built up area, this is the area occupied by building and therefore not biological productive. And energy is the area of forest need to absorb CO2 emissions from the burning of fossil fuel. So this is the way that can be calculated. But in the next slide, you have we have provided you some links that you will find very, very useful. I hope that you use some of them. You try most of the tools, and then you realize which one is working with your project, with your entity, or with your mobility project, whatever you want to do, and then implement it in your project. I hope you enjoy this webinar. I hope it was useful for you. You have here all the image sources that we have been using, and you have the booklet. Please use the booklet and download it and share it. And if you have any question, please write into us. Thank you very much for your attention, and goodbye.